we are halfway through the year. I don't know what happened, but we have a juicy episode. Queen Alchemy is coming back very soon for the last round of this year. So make sure that you are on the wait list so that you do not miss out on that opportunity because, I mean, we all know how incredible that program is. It does the selling by itself. Also, as of tomorrow, depending if you are listening to this live or not, or watching this live or not, because you can also watch the podcast on YouTube if you want to see my hand maneuvers and the dogs, and my vibey podcast studio. The Men and Money bundle is opening up tomorrow, which I am so excited about because I did this Men and Money bundle for the first time last year. And it was a huge success. It went down so well. And I just love it because it is a really important and potent blend for you to actually manifest your dream life. You know what I mean? And like we all want our dream life. We all want hot sex, a man that leads, and like to have everything that we desire. If you don't want that, you probably have some trauma healing to do, so you should join Queen Alchemy. But in all seriousness, like if you are wanting to manifest, but you don't know how to receive from men, then it's like you need to heal that component. So much of the blocks that women have around receiving their manifestations is actually to do with men. And that's the topic of today's episode. We are talking about men and emasculation and getting him to lead and all the juicy things, which obviously lends itself very, very well to Be a Lover, Not a Mother, which is one of the programs in the Men and Money bundle. And then you also have Magic Money Manifestation Level 2, plus you have 2 extra bonuses. So if you want to know the details of what is included in the Men and Money bundle, just go to the link below in the description onto the website page, and it will do all the talking for you. If you are on the wait list, which I hope for your sake that you are, you get a 48-hour discount code that you get on top of the already discounted bundle. So if you get the Men and Money bundle, it is less than if you were to buy Magic Money Manifestation Level 2 and Be a Lover, Not a Mother separately, and you also don't then get the inclusions. But by getting them together, you get these live inclusions and you also get a discount. Now, if you already have Magic Money Manifestation Level 2, then make sure that you check your emails. If you already have Be a Lover, Not a Mother as well, then you can obviously just join Magic Money Manifestation Level 2 separately. So you can buy it separate or you can buy it together. It's totally up to you. All my programs are fucking banging. And I also just finished re-recording and refining all the modules in Magic Money Manifestation Level 2. So you have that to look forward to. It's fresh, it's new, it's vibey. Plus, you will also get another drop of modules at the end of August, beginning of September, around that time. You'll get a new drop of modules in Magic Money Manifestation Level 2, possibly even earlier. Who knows? But they're going to be recorded whilst we are in Europe. So we are going to Europe. I'm recording a bunch of content there so that you guys in Magic Money Manifestation Level 2 and also in the Feminine CEO, you can then kind of soak up those manifestation vibes of the abundance of Italy, whilst you are doing all of the incredible work around manifesting your dream life. So without further ado, let me shut up and let's jump in to talk about emasculation and the difference between women's brains and men's brains, because this is going to rock your world and change your life if you understand this, if you nail it, if you know it, and if you integrate it into your relationships to give the fucking guy a little bit of a break. Okay, so firstly, what is emasculation? So, emasculation is basically the act of kind of taking away a man's masculinity. So, masculinity is something that men feel like they have to earn. They don't just get the privilege of being masculine. Like, you have to prove your masculinity. You aren't just masculine, if that makes sense. So, this is obviously in comparison to women. It is, felt, believed, thought that women just get to be feminine. That is something that's innate within them. They don't have to actively be feminine. They just are feminine, right? And that literally is feminine. We are being feminine, whereas men, they are taking action to then be masculine, right? Masculine's action, feminine is being and like receptive. So the words literally also explain that. So essentially, emasculation is when men or women are kind of stripping men of their feeling of being a man. And why this is a really important topic is because very often the women that are doing it, they have this double-edged sword in their mind where they're like, fuck men, but at the exact same time, they're like, where are all the good men? And so they put themselves in their own kind of dichotomy and frankly shit show because they're so deeply craving a masculine man very often, and their frustration and bitterness and anger around a man not leading them well enough actually is the very cause of them emasculating. So in today's episode, I want to break down kind of like how it often happens, like how women often emasculate, especially the ways that we don't really think about it, and like some questions to ask yourself. And then I also am going to go into why we emasculate so that you can kind of be a little bit aware of it. And then I'm going to go into how women and men's brains are different, which is really important because it helps you to not emasculate as much when you actually understand the poor guy. When you don't understand men very, very well, when you are just kind of oblivious to the fact that our brains are so different, it makes it easier to be frustrated and angry because you are comparing your desires and yourself to, like, what you are doing is you're comparing it to another female, but he is not a female, he is a male. So you basically, like, you know how guys say, damned if I do, damned if I don't. It's that whole kind of thing where women make men feel like no matter what they do, they're failing. And very often that's also because you're trying to prove your own story and reality of no man is good enough for me. You're also probably afraid of letting a man in because then you don't want to be hurt, or you've always been let down and you're sick of being let down. And so you're like, I don't want to fucking get let down anymore. I don't want to be disappointed. So I'm not even going to let you disappoint me. I'm just going to be the one in control all the time. There's so many underlying things that are the reason as to why we emasculate men. Just a reminder for all of you as well that like listen to these episodes. One, thank you for being an active listener. Double thank you if you've left a written review. The podcast episodes are really fucking good. Like, I give you guys so much. One, I'm like, just fucking imagine how much more you get in the program. But two, please make sure that you take action and that you then like send me a DM and tell me the action that you've taken. Tell me what has changed. I love it when you guys send emails and messages and my team sends those to me. And if I don't respond to it, they'll like tag me and be like, Monica, did you see this? And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't. Thank you so much. Blah, blah, blah. They send me everything because it's motivating for me, but more so I do this for you. So please take the action and then share with me the action that you took. Share with me what's happened. Share with me your thoughts and all those kind of things because it fuels my fire. And then obviously if you're wanting more, make sure that you join Be a Lover Not a Mother for this kind of topic. Okay. So with emasculation, this is what I was saying before. The core thing that I want you guys to understand as women and as men can definitely be listening to this episode to kind of understand where women are coming from a little bit more with emasculation. So men, this is a good episode for you to listen to as well. Women aren't emasculating because they are trying to put you down. They're not emasculating because they're trying to put men down. We are not doing that, right? We're not trying to squash them. We, at the same time, are kind of trying to be like, in the hope that it will make him fucking step up. The way that we're going about our desire for him to lead is the completely wrong way. But no one tells us. No one educates us on how to actually communicate with men, on how to actually understand the opposite sex. No one teaches men how to understand women, right? So it's like we are doing the best that we can. So the first thing I want you to know, and then also for like, you know, your friends and everything that are also emasculating and you're like, oh God, Monica would not approve, is majority of the time women are not doing it from a mean place. They're doing it from a frustrated, resentful place. And the thing is, like, resentment isn't mean. Like, yes, of course, if you do not look at your resentment, heal your resentment, take action on your resentment, then it's mean to just let it fester and like project it onto somebody. Projecting isn't nice, bottom line. But there's very rarely any real intention to do a man harm. It's that we are trying to like shake him to be better, to be more of a man. as we say, and we don't know how else to do it. So if you relate to that, you need to listen to the episode, because your desire for him to step up, the way that you do it is not to put him down. That's different for women. Like from women, women respond to kind of being shamed a little bit, because our intense need for a sense of community and safety means that we will step up and do anything to make sure that we are accepted by the tribe. Men, they don't need a tribe to survive. So when a man is squashed, he doesn't then get motivated to be better. He goes into his turtle shell and retreats. That's often why women will say, why is it as soon as I fucking stopped asking him to do things, he finally did more, but every time I ask him to fucking help me, he doesn't do it. Or every time I ask him to fucking unload the dishwasher, he doesn't do it. And I'm like, well, the way that you're expressing it to me is probably not the way that he's hearing it, or the way that you're expressing it to him, because tone, communication, words are everything. And the way in which you say something to a woman is completely different, maybe not completely, but very different to how you say it to a man. If you were to say to your mom, let's say she's staying over at your house, your apartment, and you needed her help to unload the dishwasher, you would say it to her differently to how you should say it to your partner that's a man, because we have different brains. And when you have two different brains, you need to make sure that you're communicating differently. This also goes if you have a son. So, I mean, that's a whole other topic. And I actually did an episode on how to quote unquote prevent trauma, because you really there's only so much you can do to prevent trauma. How to prevent trauma in children. I'm going to make sure it's linked below. And I talk a bit in there as well, how to mother a son without emasculating him. So that could be really helpful for some of you. But for those of you that have a son, or that want to have a son one day, or that just have a lot of men in your life, everything that I'm sharing around emasculation goes for them too. Emasculation isn't something to just not do to your romantic partner. It's something that you don't want to do to all men, because the reality is this. We women, we want to feel safe around men. We want to be loved. We want to be protected by them. We want to know that they will take a bullet for us. That is relaxing and rejuvenating to our nervous system. You inhibit yourself from having that reality when you emasculate men, because you do not become a safe environment for their masculinity to thrive. You want to feel like you're watering their garden of masculinity. And if you are shaming, judging, emasculating, putting down, trying to be this alpha woman, there's no space for him to rise into his masculinity. I know I always say this, but I'm going to say it again. Let him lead. The letting is important. You're not asking him to, you're not telling him to, you're not demanding him to, you're not doing any of that. You are letting. He inherently, as a masculine man and a man that wants to be masculine, he has that desire. You have to let the flower bloom. So I was just mentioning before the alpha woman. We know the alpha woman. Maybe you are the alpha woman, right? The alpha woman, the girl boss, whatever. Women these days, that feel the need to be in their hyper masculinity for whatever reason, whether it's trauma, whether it's societal conditioning, whether it's the way they grew up, whether it's because it's the only way that they feel remotely quote unquote safe, but the safety that they feel is actually an illusion. It isn't that having a career is bad, just heads up with when I'm talking about the femininity, masculinity stuff. It's never that having a career is bad. I have a career, right? But women these days hold themselves back when they don't allow, keyword allow themselves to soften in their relationships, right? If you as a woman are yeah, well, cute to hear, don't emasculate men, that's nice, Monica, but I can't because of XYZ ABC. I'm pause. If you are blaming your career or blaming men or blaming society, none of which isn't true, you are not going to be able to be in the relationship that you dream of where he's leading you, because you are not taking personal responsibility. Yes, he has to be a safe environment for you to be in your feminine. Yes, society doesn't fucking help the issue. Yes, your career being intense doesn't help either. I get those things. But if there isn't I desire to change. I want to change. I take self responsibility for maybe where I've held myself back or where I've held him back. That is the most important thing. If there isn't that, can't help you, right? No one is making you emasculate him. Yes, it's a fucking trend, and I hate it when I see those trends. We all know what I'm talking about on social media, where wives are like making fun of, emasculating very publicly their husband. And I get that it's a joke, but it feeds the narrative of men are lazy, of men are dumb, of men don't do anything, of women have to do everything. It feeds that narrative, which I do not want to have a part to play in, because if you have the like possibility of a narrative, you're going to make that narrative probably your reality. You're going to have that as an option of your, like an option of the life that you live. It's not an option for me to be in the narrative where he's lazy and I'm doing everything. That is not an option in my relationship, and I will never let that be an option. The whole, the phrase of like, let me ask the boss. Like guys will say, let me ask the boss, because the woman's the boss of the household, especially when they become a mother. We have misconstrued the archetypes of lover and mother and maiden, and like there's so many different and like the boy and the king and the prince. Like there's all these different archetypes, and it's really just like different chapters of your life, right? So before you go into that like full-blown mother archetype where you're a mother, you are the lover archetype, you're the maiden, right? And it doesn't mean that you then let go completely of the lover and the maiden, because you still have that within you. It's just that you're more predominantly the mother archetype. But what we've done for a lot of us is that we keep ourselves locked in the assumptions around the next phase of life. We create this assumption for ourselves, and then it becomes our reality of when we're a mum, we lose all sex appeal. We lose all sensuality. We become the boss of the household. Everything's on our shoulders. We create the possibility in our minds, and therefore we let it be our reality that he does nothing around the house. And society feeds that narrative. If you don't want that to be a narrative, then you need to stop buying into any possibility of that being a narrative. Even just as an example, like I cook dinner every night because I know how to cook very well. And I enjoy cooking and whatever. I don't mind doing it. So I cook dinner and I fucking hate cleaning up. I often will clean up, but if I'm tired, I will ask my fiance to clean up. Or he, more often than not, will actually see that I'm tired and be like, can you please go up to bed? I'm cleaning up. And this is like, it's a really small example, but those little moments, which, happen a few times a week, let's say last week, it probably happened twice a week. It ensures that we are not in the narrative of I do everything and he gets to watch, I don't know, TV all night because he's been working all day. It's like, I've been working all day too. We share the load. We see each other where we're at, and then we help each other. Right. So, but if you as a woman are not allowing yourself to soften into your femininity, you don't allow yourself to bathe in the enjoyment of that possibility in your relationship. A lot of women, they're hyper masculine and they wear it as a badge of honor. For whom? Like, who are you trying to please and win? Sorry, and prove yourself to seem like you're enough by wearing this badge of honor of hypermasculinity, of this alpha woman, of this alpha female that's kind of like knocking everything down and everyone down around her, but she's this shining star. I'm like, is she a shining star? Like, is that really is that really the value of the feminine these days, to emasculate men but to be thriving in their career? They're actually fucking unhappy. Like, research literally shows the amount of women in especially corporate and C-suite level positions at work, most importantly, that are more burnt out than ever before in history. They are way more burnt out than than men. And I'm like, and they're happy. But society and, politically speaking, companies now want to fill the fucking spots of we got to have a certain amount of women. And it's not to say that women can't do the C-suite executive roles. It's to say, where are we not valuing and not supporting the femininity in our society because we're trying to fucking fit into this narrative of we have to have this many women on the board in order to look a certain way. I'm like, so are the women good enough for the jobs, or are you just doing that to like look a certain way? Do you see where it's this like fucking weird two-sided thing of, we need more women in C-suite jobs. Like, that's great, but are they actually good enough for the job, or are you just hiring them because you need to, like, out of obligation, like you just need to hire women? Because then if you're doing it that way, right, of, oh, well, we just got to hire them, then it's disempowering for women. It's very funny, and I talk about this way more in my book. It's very complicated, which hence I like kind of left it for the book. A lot of the ways that feminism is now executed in society isn't actually feminism. It's for a look. It's literally for a facade. And the example is the whole board argument. A lot of companies, they now have to have a certain amount of women on the board. So they will and there's plenty of stories out there. And so these men will share that, and I've heard them personally myself from men on boards where they basically share that they have to put these women on the boards that actually aren't good enough for the board, but they have to just put them on because they have to they have to meet a certain quota. And I'm like, that is interesting how we see that as feminism, but it actually is not feminism. Right. And I hope we're all catching on with my drift, because I really shouldn't have to explain that isn't, like, that just is fucked up. Right. But people are not thinking critically. People just see it point blank, oh, great, there's now 5 women on this board. And we then like clap our hands for the company, but we don't actually think critically about it, because we are just thinking that if a woman is now seen in a role, she's good enough, rather than, is she happy? Is she burned out? Are her hormones okay? Like, is this actually her purpose in life? We've lost that in society. And now it's like society's almost pressuring in a way. Like, yeah, in a way, it's almost like society is like pressuring women to have to kind of go into these roles, rather than us realizing that it's okay if there are less women in a role. It actually doesn't necessarily mean anything about women. It just is allowing us as women to value the differences in our femininity compared to men and their masculinity. Whatever. I went on a whole fucking tangent. We are pulling back in. That was a good one, but we're pulling it back in. I cannot believe that the time is here for me to announce the 12th round of Queen Alchemy, which is crazy. This will be my probably like 18th or maybe 19th round of this kind of group program, the 12th round of it being called Queen Alchemy, and I am so excited for it. Of course, every round just gets better and better and better, and this round is going to be no different. So if you haven't heard of Queen Alchemy, if you haven't even given yourself the opportunity to look at the website page, this is your reminder. Make sure you're on the wait list so that you do not miss out on when when the enrollment kind of period opens. All you have to do is you have to fill out a form that gets sent to you, which you can fill out early. The earlier that you join, obviously, it means that you can jump into some of the content earlier, so you get ahead on the portal content before we jump into all the live calls, because there is a lot of live calls. So when you start joining up to the wait list, you will get that intake form where you can click it, you fill out your details, and then I will email you to just be like, yep, Queen Alchemy is a fit, or if I need, if I want to ask you any questions to confirm anything, or if I want to suggest a one-on-one, I will do that. So everybody, like, quote unquote, gets into Queen Alchemy. It's not like an application process or anything. Everyone will be able to join Queen Alchemy. It's just, I like the form because I want to make sure it's the right fit for you. I want to know your case. I want to just say hi to you. I want to get to know you a little bit. And then, of course, for some of you, you 100% need a few one-on-ones or one-on-one to get the most out of the container. So I will then suggest those to you. So I'll leave the link below. Make sure that you check out the website page. There are hundreds of testimonials. If you look on my highlights on my Instagram profile, you'll see that there are 6, 7, 8, I can't remember how many now, so many highlights for Queen Alchemy so you can read all the screenshots, all the testimonials, because they really just speak for themselves. Let's jump back into the episode. So I have some questions for you guys. This is for women. Why don't you want to soften? Why don't you want to let yourself soften? That's question number one. Question number two is, what is quote unquote bad about softening and surrendering? These are questions I want you guys to think about. Maybe pause the episode, think, and then come back. The last question is, what would it mean if you were no longer labeled or given the label or given the badge of honor as girl boss, or you're such like an alpha female, or you're such a boss babe, or whatever it is? What would it mean if you were no longer labeled? And these are like according to you, right? According to you, what is bad about softening and surrendering? According to you, what would it mean if you were no longer labeled as a girl boss? Why don't you want to let yourself soften? What are you afraid of? Like, blah, blah, blah. Those are the kind of things to think about, because there is so much transformation in those questions, right? Like the answers are going to give you your doorway to where you need to do your work. So what are some common ways that we emasculate? Number one, making jokes about how he's a kid, he doesn't do this enough, he doesn't do that enough, basically putting him down for things he does or doesn't do. Bossing him around is a big one, asking him for help and then just essentially doing it yourself because he quote unquote can't do it right. Comparing him to other men, criticizing him, not allowing him his own space and his own time. That's a really big one, because men need time and space like we need connection and intimacy. Saying he's a wimp, grow some balls, be a man, like phrases like that, not helpful, not supportive, not going to allow him to rise or for him to feel safe to rise. Not taking his salary or his job seriously, or his passion seriously. Not taking his salary, job, or passion seriously is a really, really big one. You saying things to him like, I knew you wouldn't be able to do it, or I told you you couldn't do it. Those kind of things, again, where it's like he was trying to probably help you be the man, look masculine, feel masculine. And he's already beating himself up over the fact that he kind of failed, right? Or he thinks he failed. And then for you to rub it in, not helpful. A better comment would be, babe, you haven't failed. Like, you've helped me so much. Thank you for doing X, Y, and Z. Men don't want to feel like failures. But when you emasculate them, they feel like a failure, and then they immediately feel like you let them down. If you haven't binged all of my episodes on emasculation and men and feminine, masculine, etc., the podcast directory is in the description. Scroll to that topic, that section, and binge listen to them all, because I don't want to repeat myself in this episode. And there is beyond I cannot even comprehend how much content there is in these over 300 episodes. So make sure that you listen to them. So why do we emasculate? The first thing is that often women emasculate because they are trying to protect themselves from being hurt or let down. So this lends itself to what I was saying in the beginning, where, a lot of the time it's not that women want to be mean. It's that they're emasculating out of a trauma response more often than not. You're emasculating out of this reactionary place of self-protection. Another reason why we do it is because we have a story that we're always disappointed by men. They always let us down. They always disappoint us. They don't do enough for us. They're not actually protecting us. They don't have our back. They use us, whatever story you have. So we tell ourselves that we just have to do it ourselves. If we want it done properly, and if we want it done well. And the bitterness about that and the anger that starts to fester about this feeling of being disappointed, let down, etc., that often will come out as emasculation. So emasculation is often this pent-up bitterness, frustration, and anger that we have towards men, or towards your man, or towards men as a whole, that will then be projected. Because of our brains thinking that if we put him down, maybe he'll step up, that often also causes us to emasculate out of this habitual response, because if we were told that, we would step the fuck up. If we were told, why do you keep doing this? It would cause us to step up, but it's not the case for men, right? So because he's not being masculine, we think that we have to be the masculine one. So then we will jump in there with this like hyper masculinity, need to control. We rip his ability to control and lead out from underneath him because we feel like he's not doing a good enough job at being in control and leading. And somebody has to be in control and lead. So then we'll just be in control and lead. And then if we're in control and lead, at least we're not going to be let down. At least we're not going to be disappointed. At least we're not going to be hurt. And at least it was done the way that I wanted it to be done. So you can see that there's like 10 different kind of situations all blended into one in that one of when women cannot let go of control. One of the other main reasons is because the reason why we emasculate, one of the main ones also, is out of sheer exhaustion. Exhaustion, frustration, that we aren't being led, that we aren't being protected and provided for in the way that we want to be. Now, there's two sides to this because one, you may not be letting him lead or protect you in the way that you want to be. And then the other side is that you may not actually be seeing it, right? So you may not be letting him, and then you also may not be seeing it. So you're getting frustrated because he's not doing it the way that you want, or you're not, you're not seeing it because of your own glasses that you have on of like past shit with men. And so that can be really frustrating for him also because he's like, I'm fucking leading you, but you don't let me. Like I'm trying, but you don't let me. A lot of couples that I've worked with before, because I do work with couples occasionally, and a lot of them, it's interesting because he has such an intense desire to lead, but he feels like she doesn't let him. And she'll often feel like he doesn't lead well enough or he doesn't put his foot down hard enough. And I talk about this in like one of the subdom episodes that I did, um, essentially where, and it's also in my book, a lot of women want to be led more firmly. It's actually safer for our nervous system if you know how, if you actually have like healed your trauma, it's safer for you when he really puts his foot down. And when it's like this dwindling, like half in, half out, and kind of like, oh, maybe we could do this, it just makes you want to fucking puke. It's interesting how society kind of has this narrative, and it goes on to men of like, don't be too aggressive, don't be too dominant, don't be too this, don't be too that. So men silence a lot of their dominance and assertiveness. But then women are like, can you be more dominant? Can you be more assertive? And obviously in a healthy way, duh. But it's just like it honestly, on the topic of anger, it fucking angers me how the media and how politics and how society has just twisted such an important conversation to become something that is so incorrect to talk about, yet everyone is thinking it. Everyone is craving it. So insert my book when it comes out. But anyway, speaking of which, the book is actually coming out in March now. It's not coming out in November. I know I was like a few episodes ago, oh, it is coming back out in November. And now I'm like, nope, it's definitely March. So it's coming out in March. All right, let's wrap up with how women and men's brains are different. And I'll recap what I said at the beginning of the episode. Why it's important to know the difference between men and women's brains, and Be Loved Not a Mother goes way more into this as well, and like more examples and a bit easier to understand too, because I just like obviously go on about it for fucking hours. Why it's really important is because when you understand how he's different and how his brain interprets information differently, how his brain is motivated differently to yours, it allows you to tweak your communication, your tactics, your like the way in which you relate to each other to then be heard and seen the way that you want to be, but the way in which he can see it like that. So put it this way, like, those times when you have a certain idea of how you want to be felt and seen by him, right? So you try to express yourself and then he does not see you like that and he does not feel you like that or hear you like that. So you're like, what the fuck? So what I'm saying is that you know how you want to feel, you know how you want to be felt by him, and you know how you want to be seen by him. So you then, because you know that and because you know how he interprets the information as a man, you're going to tweak your words to lend itself to him. So now he sees you the way that you're craving to be seen, and he feels and hears you the way that you are wanting to be felt and heard. So you both then win. Like, yeah, it meant you had to like maybe change your delivery on things, but you then actually got the outcome that you were wanting to get. And he needs to obviously do the same in reverse, because he needs to go from man language to woman language. So men tend to, and I firstly want to say, what's really fascinating, and again, this is in my book in more detail, is the science unequivocally proves that men and women's brains are vastly different, that gender is not a social construct, right? So girls aren't, they don't gravitate towards Barbies because society tells them to gravitate towards Barbies. They gravitate towards Barbies because that is how our brains are wired. Boys gravitate towards trucks and tools because that's how their brains are wired. It's not a gender, it's not a fucking social construct. That is how girls and boys are wired at a very, very, like, from fucking in the womb, right? From in utero. And then that's how they express their femininity, masculinity, their difference in their brains, right? Anyway, so there is so much research to prove this. And a lot of the scientists that are continuously like, it's not, gender is not a fucking social construct, like, they get so much backlash because it's now like not acceptable to be like, gender isn't a social construct. And I write about this in my book because it is so important that we, as adults, right? The fucking, like, the 10-year-old child isn't aware of this stuff happening, or at least I hope not. The adults can't even, one, critically think, and two, realize that there is allowed to be a difference of opinion. If some people want to believe gender is a social construct, like, I don't care. But my issue is when scientists are now being like, I mean, like, cancel culture on steroids kind of thing is basically what's happening for a lot of these people. Like, defunded, massively ridiculed online, etc. And these are scientists, right, that have have worked for decades on this kind of research, because it doesn't prove the narrative that people want to currently hear. And there is one study that was actually then disproven because the research wasn't correct. One study that said that that gender was a social construct. Like, they were basically saying that, like, basically the study was saying that women and men don't have, girls and boys, right, do not have, and women and men don't have differences in their brains. It was incorrect, the study, and it was actually proven to be incorrect. And there is an unequivocal amount of research that proves otherwise. But what I find so sad is that so many scientists now feel the need to, like, overcompensate with their words of how this is correct, if that makes sense. Whatever. I won't go on because I'll just go on about it forever. But anyway, so men and women's brains are vastly different. And the reason, so our brains are actually a sex organ. Our brains and the way in which they are wired and how they are different is influenced by our hormones, right? So men have predominantly testosterone, that's their predominant sex hormone. We have predominantly progesterone and estrogen. And our brains are heavily influenced by estrogen and progesterone, and their brains are heavily influenced by testosterone, right? And when a woman is pregnant, every fetus starts off as a girl, right? And then the fetus gets a like tidal wave of testosterone that essentially makes the fetus then become a boy. So men tend to have more of this reporting style. We know what we're talking about. They're logical. They use speech that contains facts, that contains data, and that, like, aims to solve a problem. Men also, this is again because of testosterone in their brain, they tend to leave out more of that personal information, the anecdotes, the storytelling, etc. And they'll try to just have a clear, concise, direction orientated conversation, and then that's it, the end, goodbye. Women, on the other hand, we have more of a rapport style, right? We want to build a relationship. We are great relationship builders, right? We have empathy and warmth and this nurturing ability far beyond what a man can provide. It doesn't mean that a man cannot be nurturing and warm. Studies do show that actually when a man has a child, as in like, his wife has, or his partner has a child and he becomes a father, that improves his ability to be more nurturing and warm and whatnot. When a man is like holding his own child, the release of oxytocin that he gets actually kind of blunts his testosterone and brings up a little bit of they have a very, very, very small amount of estrogen. It brings up a bit of their estrogen, which then also helps to just kind of soften them. And then as time goes on, that's why our grandfathers are more empathetic than what they were, when they were 30, because their hormones change, right? A man's testosterone declines over time, which causes, or not causes, it allows then men to be more warm and empathetic as they age because they have less testosterone. So women have this like rapport style, and we are going to share more personal information. We're going to have the storytelling. We're going to emphasize, our feelings and our emotions. And this can kind of annoy men because they're so different to us, because they use less emotions. And even sometimes I'll be like full blown storytelling, all my emotions. My fiance is like, can you get to the fucking point? Like, what is the point of this? And I'm like, oh, I was just telling you a story. And he's like, oh my God, okay. And it's like irritating for them sometimes because they're like, is there a problem? Because if it's not a problem, then like, why are you communicating with me? And I'm like, just, to connect. He's like, oh my God, we don't have to like talk to connect. And I'm like, okay, yep, this is the difference between us. And this is why it's important, because I can just walk away being like, lol, this is fucking men and women. Whereas for a lot of people, it would be like, oh my God, he's gaslighting me, so mean, he's rejecting me. I don't feel heard and seen. And I'm like, bitch, he's a man. Like, honestly, you need to be more concerned if he sits down and he's like drowning in your feelings with him. Like, yes, there is a time and place for that. And yes, a man can do that. And yes, we do that. We will have very intimate, deep conversations sometimes. But even still, in those intimate and deep conversations, if we have a scale of emotion, I'm like over here, 10 out of 10. And the max that he would get to is probably a 6 out of 10. And let me tell you, if you know my fiance, obviously most of you don't, he is the most warm, empathetic, loving man. Like he will do whatever it takes to please and love and help and protect everybody. So, like, in business, for example, he has more, maybe it's a bad example. Depending on the situation, he can have more empathy than I can have, put it that way. So, he is a very loving man, but he's still in a conversation, or when we're talking or when we're connecting, it's different. It's a completely different level of connection. I'm going to give you another example. Christmas time, right? I'm like, babe, I really want a card. To me, I'm like, I want you to write me like a 3-page essay. And to him, it's like, but you know that I love you. Like, can't I just tell you? Like, completely different. Meanwhile, I hand him a card that's like 3 pages long. He's like, Jesus Christ, because that's my way of connecting, right? I am emotional. I am a woman. I'm going to write. I'm going to build the rapport. I'm going to storytell. Whereas for him, he doesn't feel the need to do that because he's like, the fact is I love you. So that's the end. Like, I've chosen you. I've claimed you. You're mine. Like, what more is there? And I'm like, and whereas I want to keep going and keep going and keep going. So where was I? So ensuring that you can appreciate the difference between his brain and your brain is going to really support the relationship more than you think. When I was, in regards to the whole piece around differences in our brain that I was talking about before. So there's a study on toys and children, right? So there's a study that involves monkeys, and researchers discovered that the male monkeys, they want toys with wheels, and female monkeys want toys that are more like plush and warm and likable dolls, right? We are not putting humans in this study. They put monkeys in this study. And the reason why they actually put monkeys in the study is so that it could disprove and it could like just throw out the whole, well, it's a young girl who, has been programmed by society. So it's in her DNA, blah, blah, blah. Like it could then throw out anyone that said that. Hence, they used monkeys. So these preferences, they can't be attributed to external factors, right? Like parents buying a certain toy for their daughter and only certain toys for their son. Even at an age where children are showing really minimal signs of recognizing their own toys and other kids' toys, boys and girls as young as 9 to 17 months, they show remarkable differences in their preferences for stereotypical male versus female toys. Also, and I've probably said this before in an episode, maybe it was in my book, I lose track of where I've said shit. The cognitive differences between boys and girls begin literally from the day they were born. So, if you've ever seen children, girls exhibit a greater preference or like responsiveness to faces. They will watch faces because they are taking in information from the emotive expressions and the facial expressions on somebody's face. Whereas boys, what they are more interested in is their visual environment. They're interested in like discrepancies and issues in their visual environment where they can get hands on. They want to get into things, right? They want to fix things. Whereas girls, they are looking around them and they're taking in the information. So the whole idea of women and men have the same brain, that gender is not a thing, that gender is a social construct, it just isn't legit. It's not actually real. If you're, I actually, maybe I shouldn't get into this right now because I want to wrap up this episode, but I think, yeah, I'm not going to get into that, but I will leave it for another episode and also for my book. If I get on this and say this to you guys, there's going to be an astronomical amount of you that are like, wait, I need you to talk more of this topic. And then I won't get to it as quickly as I can. And then I'll be leaving you guys hanging. So, in regards to then coming into adult life as well, for men versus women, women possess a larger hippocampus than men. And the hippocampus is really important for learning and for remembering things. Men, on the other hand, have a larger amygdala, and the amygdala is associated with like the experiencing things and the recollection of emotions from a situation, right? Protective is what the amygdala is really about. It's going to like sound off the danger bell, the danger bells, the danger alarms, whatever. The structural differences between men's brains and women's brains means that men and women process and recall emotional memories very differently. And we do, right? If you've ever had a conversation with a man about, a memory that you have, you probably remember how you felt in it a lot, whereas he probably remembers like facts around the situation that you probably don't remember, because we often remember emotions more than we remember facts, which is why women are actually more vulnerable to getting not to getting to being depressed, to having PTSD, to struggling with anxiety and all those kind of things, just because of the way that our brains interpret, store, and remember information. So we as women, we have an ability to retain more vivid memories than men, and we are able to recall them more quickly and with greater intensity compared to men. So that's why in arguments we're like, do you not remember 3 years ago on Tuesday, June 12th, when you did blah, 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 and maybe for blah, blah, blah. And they're like, wait, what the fuck? We can remember things with such detail and intensity, but men aren't as able to do that. Their brains are just not wired like that. So the question kind of remains of why do men and women's brains exhibit such differences? So like I was kind of alluding to at the beginning of this whole topic of this part of the podcast, our sex hormones as women and men makes such a huge impact on our brain, and it will make an impact through our cycle as women. This is why you can feel like a different version of yourself at different phases of your cycle, because your brain is literally responding to your hormones. So when a man doesn't have enough testosterone, that's going to affect his ability to feel as masculine, as dominant, as directed, as assertive. Just like when we don't have enough progesterone or enough estrogen, that can be affecting our libido. And your brain is, by the way, a very strong component in your ability to be like aroused and turned on and have an orgasm and everything. So when we don't have enough progesterone or enough estrogen, we will know about it in our moods, in the way that we're reacting to things, even in the way that we're sleeping, our dreams, our memory, all those kind of things. So what I really urge you guys to do is I urge you to re-listen to this episode. There was so much in there that I've given you. I was meaning to make this episode 35 minutes. Lol. There was so much in there. I urge you to re-listen, to share it with a friend, to take some notes and whatnot, because I truly believe and know from my own experience and from clients' experiences, when you can heal your relationship with men, it is such a life-changing thing, because at the end of the day, 50% of the world is men. So if you're going around every day hating men, I'm like, enjoy your life. So I'm going to leave the episode there. If you haven't left a review, please do. If you haven't gotten the freebies on the website, if you haven't joined my email list, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, make sure that you do all the things so you don't miss out on anything. Emails are the place to be now. I'm also busy continuing to create YouTube videos so I can show you guys more behind the scenes things. And do not forget that the Men and Money bundle is open tomorrow. So if you are listening to this not in the right time, like you're not listening to this on the day that it went live, it's opening on June 22nd, and it will be open for a few weeks for you to grab the combination of Be Loving on a Mother and Magic Money Manifestation Level 2. And there are some extras in there as well. If you guys have any questions about anything, please just reach out as usual, and I will see you next Wednesday for the next episode.